Naya's boots crunched against the rocky ground as she climbed higher along the jagged cliffside of planet Korath. The sun, or what passed for a sun here, hung low in the pale green sky, casting long, trembling shadows across the landscape. Dust and small pebbles slid under her feet, forcing her to pause and steady herself. Her heart beat fast, but not from fear. Adventure had always called her, and she had never been one to shy away. She adjusted her backpack, feeling the weight of her tools, supplies, and the small satchel that carried her most precious find: the medicinal crystals she had been hunting for weeks. Naya had come to Korath alone. Humans rarely explored planets like this now. Most preferred safer, pre-mapped worlds. But she thrived on danger, on the unknown. A loose rock gave way under her right boot. Her ankle twisted sharply, sending a jolt of pain up her leg. She cried out softly and fell onto her side, clutching her ankle. The pain was sharp, a reminder that even someone as skilled as she could be vulnerable. Naya tried to stand, but the ankle wouldn't support her weight. "This isn't good," she muttered, scanning the terrain. The cliff above looked impossible to climb, and the slope below dropped into jagged rocks and alien shrubs that seemed harmless, but hid thorns that could tear through clothing or skin. Naya gritted her teeth. She had prepared for harsh conditions, but being injured here was a new challenge. She pulled her comlink from her belt, hoping she might reach someone in orbit. The device blinked a warning. No signal. Typical. Remote planets rarely had coverage, and Korath's storms often interfered with communications. She took a deep breath. Panic had no place here. She had survived worse, but the pain made her wince, and she knew she couldn't move far without risking a fall that could end her life. She needed help, and fast. From her vantage point, she scanned the surrounding area. The desert-like expanse stretched endlessly, dotted with strange alien flora. Plants shimmered in the soft light, some glowing faintly as if alive with their own energy. Naya's instincts told her that some of these plants could be dangerous. Others could help her. She didn't have time to experiment. She needed a plan. She sat down and removed her satchel with the crystals, placing it carefully beside her. She examined her ankle. Swelling had begun almost immediately, and the skin had bruised. She was alone, trapped, and at the mercy of the planet's creatures. Naya's eyes narrowed. She had learned from her Apache ancestors that survival required patience, strategy, and observation. The first step was staying calm. The second step was signaling for help, even if the odds were slim. A soft, unfamiliar sound reached her ears. At first, she thought it was the wind. But then it came again, a rhythmic crunching, like boots on stone. She froze. Slowly, she turned her head toward the sound. A figure appeared at the edge of the canyon below. At first, she thought it might be another explorer, or worse, a competitor seeking the same crystals. But the person moved with purpose, scanning the terrain as carefully as she did. A man. Human. Not a soldier or scientist, but someone who looked unusual for a planet like this. His clothes reminded her of old frontier tales from Earth. Dusty leather, wide-brimmed hat, a tool belt with equipment hanging at his side. He looked like a cowboy from stories she had heard as a child. Naya blinked. A cowboy on a distant planet? The sight was almost unreal. The man stopped and looked up. For a long moment, he stared directly at her. She waved cautiously. He tipped his hat and called out, "You all right there?" Naya swallowed the lump in her throat. "I twisted my ankle. I can't move," she said, her voice tight with pain. The man, Cade, as she would later learn, nodded. He didn't hesitate. With careful, deliberate steps, he climbed toward her, moving faster than seemed possible over such rough terrain. Naya watched him with a mixture of relief and suspicion. Humans were unpredictable, especially strangers. When he reached her, Cade knelt down, keeping his voice calm and even. "I'm not here to harm you," he said. "You need to get off this cliff before night falls." Naya tried to assess him. There was no weapon visible, just a belt full of tools and a small satchel. His eyes were sharp, observant, like he had seen more of the galaxy than she could imagine. She trusted him immediately, not fully, but enough to know that he could help her survive. "I can't walk," she admitted. "I don't know if I can even stand." Cade nodded. He took off a rope from his belt and secured it to a rock nearby. "I've got you," he said. "We'll get you down safely." Together, they worked carefully. Cade's hands were steady, his movements confident. He tied a sling under Naya's arms and helped her lean on him, acting as support while she took the smallest, most cautious steps down the cliffside. Every step sent pain through her ankle, but Cade's calm presence gave her the courage to continue. As they descended, the wind picked up, carrying with it the soft, eerie cries of distant creatures. Naya tensed. Korath was alive in ways humans could not fully understand, and she had already sensed eyes watching them from the cliffs above and the desert floor below. "Stay close," Cade said, his voice low but firm. "They don't attack unless they think you're weak." Naya's heart skipped a beat. She had survived alien wildlife before, but nothing like this. Her ancestors had taught her to read the land, to anticipate danger, and she realized that despite her injury, she could still contribute. She pointed out a path that looked safer, guiding them around sharp rocks and thorny plants. Cade followed her directions without question. Hours passed, or maybe just minutes. Time felt strange under Korath's twin suns. Finally, they reached a narrow ledge that overlooked a wide canyon below. The sun's light shimmered off crystals embedded in the canyon walls, reflecting a rainbow of colors across the jagged rocks. Naya's eyes widened. She recognized some of the formations. This was near the area she had been searching for. Before she could savor the sight, Cade's sharp whistle cut through the air. Naya followed his gaze. A group of small, insect-like creatures emerged from the shadows. Their bodies glowed faintly, and their legs moved in perfect coordination, almost like they were testing her. "They're curious," Naya whispered. "Not dangerous. Yet," Cade nodded. "We need to keep moving." Curiosity can turn to aggression, fast. Supporting Naya as best he could, Cade began the slow descent toward a flatter area where she could rest. The creatures followed at a distance. Watching, Naya noticed something remarkable. Even though she was injured, her instincts and quick thinking allowed her to predict the creatures' movements, guiding them away from the narrow path that could have trapped them. By the time they reached a safer spot, the sky was deepening into hues of orange and purple. Naya sank to the ground, exhausted, her ankle throbbing, but alive. Cade crouched beside her, handing her a small canister of water. "You're tougher than you look," he said with a smile. "Most people don't make it this far alone." Naya took a sip, her throat dry from the climb and the stress. "I've had practice," she said quietly. "Surviving isn't just about strength. It's about patience, observation, and knowing your limits." Cade nodded. "I can see that, and knowing when to accept help is just as important." They settled down for the night, careful to keep watch over the creatures below. The stars above Korath were strange, more numerous than any Naya had seen on Earth. The alien sky made her feel small, but alive. She realized that survival was no longer just about the crystals. It was about staying alive long enough to learn, adapt, and face the challenges ahead. As she drifted into a light, wary sleep, she thought of her ancestors, the Apache women, who had survived harsh lands and fierce enemies. She could feel their strength in her bones, and though she was far from home, in a strange and dangerous world, she knew she was not alone. Somewhere, in the darkness beyond the canyon, Cade remained vigilant. Two humans, injured, wary, but unbroken. And somewhere in the shadows, the creatures watched, waiting to see what these new, clever beings would do next. Naya's journey had only just begun. The next morning, The sun rose over the jagged cliffs of planet Korath, painting the desert in shades of orange and green. Naya stirred, wincing as a sharp pain ran through her ankle. She shifted slightly, careful not to aggravate the injury. Cade was already awake, sitting nearby and cleaning some tools he had used to stabilize their makeshift camp. "Morning," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Sleep well?" Naya forced a smile. "As well as one can sleep on a rock with your ankle screaming at you." She flexed her foot slightly, testing its limits. Pain shot through her leg, but she gritted her teeth and nodded. "I can move today. With help," Cade chuckled. "Good. You'll need to. The terrain gets trickier once we leave this ledge." Naya studied him. He had the look of someone who had seen a lot weathered features. Strong hands, and eyes that seemed to notice every detail. Yet there was no rush. No arrogance. Just calm confidence. She realized that he was exactly the kind of human she could trust in a dangerous place like this. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Down to the canyon floor," Cade replied. "We'll find a safer route toward your crystals. But we need to move carefully. The creatures from yesterday aren't far away. And there are worse things in the deeper valleys." Naya nodded, letting him help her to her feet. She relied on his steady hands and strength as they began their descent. Each step was slow, each movement deliberate. The wind swept over the cliffs, carrying faint echoes of distant alien sounds. Naya's instincts told her to stay alert. Halfway down, they paused. Cade pointed toward a narrow path that wound through jagged rocks and alien shrubs. "This way," he said. "It's a little longer, but safer." "Those plants aren't as harmless as they look." Naya glanced at them. Some had sharp, crystalline thorns, others seemed to pulse with light, as if sensing movement. She recognized a few from her research, but many were completely unknown. She led the way, guiding Cade around the most dangerous ones. Despite her ankle, she moved carefully but confidently, showing that even injured, humans could think and adapt faster than many creatures. Suddenly, a loud screech echoed from the canyon below. Naya froze. Cade's hand went to the side of his belt, but he didn't draw any weapon. He only watched. Calm and measured. "Small ones," he said. "Just curious. They won't attack unless provoked." Naya squinted into the shadows. A small group of the glowing, insect-like creatures they had seen yesterday emerged. Their legs moved in perfect synchronization, and their eyes reflected the sunlight in strange colors. They were intelligent, but still cautious. Naya whispered, "We can use that. They watch, but they don't understand us fully yet." Cade nodded. "Lead the way then." Using her knowledge of the creatures' patterns, Naya guided them along a winding path that kept the creatures at a distance. She pointed out safe footholds and led Cade around patches of quicksand-like sand. Each careful step reinforced her belief that humans through observation, ingenuity, and patience could survive even in the most alien environments. By midday, the canyon walls rose higher, narrowing the path. The wind picked up, carrying a fine, reddish dust that stung their eyes and made breathing difficult. Cade held up a cloth to cover his mouth and nose and handed one to Naya. "This storm came fast," he said. "We need to find shelter." Naya scanned the walls. She spotted a small overhang halfway up the canyon, just large enough to block the wind. "There," she said. "We can wait it out." They climbed carefully, supporting each other. Naya's ankles screamed in protest, but Cade's steady guidance kept her safe. Once under the overhang, they set down their packs and crouched close to the rock wall. The wind howled outside, carrying the faint, eerie cries of creatures hidden in the sandstorm. Cade looked at Naya, his expression serious. "Korath isn't forgiving. You've got to be ready for anything." Naya nodded. "I know, but we can handle this. Together." The storm raged for hours. Dust coated their skin, sand scraped their clothes, and the temperature dropped sharply. Naya felt the sting of fear at the thought of being stranded here if Cade weren't around, but she pushed it aside. Fear was useless. Planning and patience were what kept humans alive. As the storm began to fade, A strange sound caught their attention. It was rhythmic. Heavy footsteps that didn't match the creatures they had seen. Naya's instincts screamed caution. Cade's eyes narrowed. "They're bigger," he said quietly. "Not like anything we've faced yet." Naya peered into the dim light. A massive shape moved through the fading dust, its body covered in chitin-like armor. Its eyes glowed faintly, intelligent and assessing. Naya's mind raced. She realized these were predators, larger and far more coordinated than the small insect-like ones. But they weren't attacking yet. "They were studying," Cade whispered. "We need to keep moving. If they sense weakness, we're in trouble." Together, they descended from the overhang, using every skill they had to move quietly and carefully. Naya noticed patterns in the creature's movement, predicting where they would step, and guiding Cade to avoid being trapped. Despite her injury, she became a leader, showing that humans could rely on intelligence and courage even when physically limited. Hours later, they reached a flatter area, a valley of glowing crystals just beyond the canyon. Naya's heart lifted. This was the place she had been searching for. The crystals shimmered with a faint light, each one containing potential cures for illnesses that plagued countless worlds. But there was no time to rest. The larger predators had followed them, keeping their distance, but clearly tracking their movements. Naya and Cade paused behind a rocky outcrop, catching their breath and planning their next move. "We can use the crystals," Naya said quietly. "They'll reflect light and confuse them if we need to escape." Cade nodded. "Good thinking. Let's get closer." Moving carefully, they approached the crystal valley. The creatures watched, keeping a steady distance. Naya felt a thrill of excitement, mixed with fear. She realized that humans weren't just survivors, they were problem solvers, innovators, and fighters in their own way. Every decision, every observation, counted. Suddenly, one of the smaller creatures darted forward, skimming the ground toward them. Naya reacted instantly, waving her hand and guiding it away from the path they needed to take. Cade smiled. "You've got quick reflexes. I like that." Naya couldn't help but smile back, despite the exhaustion. "Experience," she said. "And a little stubbornness." As they reached the center of the valley, surrounded by glowing crystals, they paused. Cade helped Naya sit, checking her ankle again. "We made it this far," he said. "But the night could bring new challenges. We need to stay alert." Naya nodded, gazing at the crystals. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the valley. The light bounced off the crystals, creating a kaleidoscope of colors. It was beautiful and deadly. The predators lurked nearby, and any misstep could be fatal. "We can't let fear stop us," Naya said quietly. Cade looked at her, admiration in his eyes. "You're right. And I'm glad I'm not facing this planet alone." Together, they set up a small, hidden camp among the crystals. They were careful to avoid attracting the predator's attention. Cade kept watch while Naya rested, her mind racing with strategies for the coming days. She knew they would have to move quickly, navigate more dangerous terrain, and face creatures far more cunning than anything they had seen. But she also knew this. With intelligence, courage, and teamwork, humans could survive even in the deadliest environments. And with Cade by her side, she had a chance not just to survive, but to succeed. As the twin suns disappeared below the horizon, Naya and Cade looked out over the Crystal Valley. The stars above Korath shone brighter than any sky on Earth, a reminder that the universe was vast, dangerous, and full of possibilities. Somewhere, in the shadows, the predators watched, waiting. But Naya and Cade were ready. They were humans, and humans adapted, survived, and thrived. The journey had become more than just a search for crystals. It was a test of courage, intelligence, and the human spirit. And neither Naya nor Cade was willing to fail. The next morning, the Crystal Valley was bathed in a soft green light, strange and beautiful. Naya flexed her ankle carefully, testing its strength. It was still swollen and sore, but she could walk, with the help of Cade. Together, they moved through the valley, keeping low and cautious. Every step brought them closer to the rare medicinal crystals she had come for, but also deeper into danger. Cade had been quiet since dawn, scanning the terrain with sharp eyes. Naya noticed he was tense, his instincts alert to every movement. She had learned by now that Cade's calm confidence was backed by experience. He was like the cowboys of old Earth, stories strong, clever, and unafraid, but also careful enough to survive a planet like Korath. "They're around," Cade said suddenly, stopping and pointing toward the shadows near the far edge of the valley. Naya squinted. The smaller, insect-like creatures from before moved quietly, their glowing bodies reflecting the morning light. But beyond them, larger shapes lurked. Massive, armored predators, with segmented bodies and sharp, jointed limbs, watched from a distance. Their eyes were intelligent, observing, calculating. "They're studying us," Naya whispered. "Not just hunting," Cade nodded. "We'll need to be careful. These aren't mindless animals. They can learn and adapt. That makes them dangerous." Naya's mind raced. She remembered reading about predators on other worlds that coordinated attacks, learned patterns, and even used deception. These creatures seemed to have the same traits. They weren't just testing strength, they were testing strategy. "We need a plan," Naya said. "We can't outrun them forever. But maybe we can outsmart them." Cade tilted his hat back, studying the creatures. "I like your thinking. Let's see what we can do." For the next hour, Naya and Cade moved cautiously through the valley. Naya used her knowledge of alien behavior to predict where the creatures would step. Cade carried most of the weight, keeping her steady while she pointed out safe paths. Their teamwork was seamless, born of necessity and shared determination. Even in her injury, Naya realized that humans could be cleverer and more resourceful than almost any alien species. Suddenly, a loud screech echoed across the valley. The predators had split into groups, one moving ahead and another flanking them from the side. Naya froze. "They're trying to surround us," she whispered. Cade's eyes narrowed. "Then we need to lead them somewhere we can control." Naya scanned the terrain. In the middle of the valley was a patch of sharp, reflective crystals. If they could lure the creatures there, the light might confuse them, or at least slow them down. She pointed. "There, that area. If we get them there, we might be able to turn the fight to our advantage." Cade nodded. "Let's do it." They moved quickly but carefully, keeping low and quiet. Naya's ankle throbbed with each step, but she ignored it. She had survived worse. Together, they led the predators toward the reflective crystal patch. The smaller creatures followed easily, drawn by curiosity, while the larger ones kept their distance, watching, calculating. When they reached the crystals, Naya took a deep breath. "Now," she whispered. She gestured for Cade to throw some small stones across the reflective surfaces. The light bounced in all directions, dazzling the predators. They hesitated, confused, their movements becoming less coordinated. Naya's heart raced. It was working. Cade grinned. "Nice thinking, Naya. Quick reflexes and fast-thinking humans have an edge." The creatures hissed and clicked in frustration, their intelligent eyes scanning the patch but failing to coordinate. Naya used this moment to set up a trap. Using ropes and vines she had brought from her pack, she created a simple snare system. The goal wasn't to kill, but to slow them down long enough to escape. Hours passed in careful preparation. Every step, every placement of a rope or crystal reflection required precision. Naya's mind raced, thinking 3 steps ahead, while Cade supported her, carrying supplies and watching the perimeter. She realized that survival wasn't just about brute strength, it was about planning, observation, and patience, human traits that gave them an advantage, even against creatures far stronger or faster. As the sun began to set, the predators advanced toward the crystals, drawn by the movement and light. Naya and Cade held their position behind a large boulder, ready to spring their plan. "Here they come," Naya whispered, her pulse quickening. The predators approached cautiously. The reflective crystals flashed light in their eyes, disorienting them. Naya triggered the rope snares she had set, and several creatures became momentarily trapped, struggling to free themselves. The larger predators hesitated, confused by the smaller ones, and the flashes of light. Cade moved quickly, using a small device to create a loud, vibrating sound. It was harmless but startling, further confusing the predators. Naya watched in awe. Even injured, humans could manipulate their environment to create advantage. The predators had power, speed, and intelligence, but Naya and Cade had strategy and ingenuity, something no predator could match. Finally, the creatures began to retreat, their coordinated attack disrupted. Naya exhaled, relief flooding her body. She leaned on Cade, exhausted but proud. "You did it," Cade said. "We did it." Naya smiled weakly. "We work together. That's what matters. Humans survive by thinking and helping each other, not just by fighting." Cade nodded, admiration in his eyes. "You're right. Humans, we have something special. Even here, against creatures designed to hunt and kill, we adapt. We survive." Naya's mind drifted to her ancestors, the Apache women who had survived harsh lands and fierce enemies. She felt their strength in her, in every calculated step and every careful decision. Even in a world far from Earth, the human spirit thrived, but their victory was short-lived. From the shadows of the valley, larger predators emerged. Ones they hadn't seen before. Massive, with segmented armor and claws long enough to tear through rock, they moved with intelligence, observing the humans' every move. Naya's heart raced, but fear didn't paralyze her. She had survived worse. She had adapted. "We have to move," Cade said, helping her to her feet. "They're learning fast." Naya nodded, leaning heavily on him. "Lead the way." Together, they navigated the Crystal Valley, using every trick and observation to stay ahead of the predators. Naya spotted paths that could trap or slow them down, areas where light could reflect off crystals to confuse the hunters, and narrow passes where the predators couldn't follow easily. Cade followed her guidance, impressed by her skill. Hours later, they reached the edge of the valley, near a narrow canyon that could lead to safer ground. The predators were still behind them, but slowed and hesitant. Naya and Cade paused, catching their breath. "We're not safe yet," Naya said. "But we've proven something. Even injured, humans can survive, think, and outsmart creatures stronger than themselves." Cade smiled, handing her a sip of water. "I've seen a lot in my time, Naya. But you remind me why humans are special. Courage, intelligence, and the ability to adapt. No other species has that combination." Naya felt a surge of pride. The universe was vast, full of dangers she could never have imagined. But humans had the tools to survive. And with Cade by her side, she felt even stronger. As night fell, they set up a small camp in the canyon, hidden from the predators above. The stars of Korath shone brightly, reflecting off the distant crystals. Naya looked at them, feeling both small and powerful. Humans were fragile in the face of alien worlds, yes, but their intelligence, adaptability, and courage made them formidable. Cade kept watch while Naya rested, her mind planning the next steps. They would need to move carefully in the coming days, face challenges that required every ounce of strategy, and confront creatures more cunning than they had imagined. But they were ready. Humans survived by thinking, observing, and never giving up. Somewhere in the shadows, the predators watched. But Naya and Cade had shown them that humans were not easy prey. They were clever, brave, and relentless. And that made all the difference. The alien hunt was far from over. But for now, the humans had the advantage. And in a universe designed to test survival, that advantage could mean everything. Naya and Cade exchanged a glance. They knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but they also knew that human ingenuity and courage could overcome even the most intelligent and deadly predators. Together, they would face whatever the universe threw at them and survive. The next morning, the canyon was quiet. Almost eerily so. Naya stretched her ankle carefully, testing its strength. The swelling had gone down slightly, but it still throbbed with every step. Cade was already awake, inspecting the terrain ahead. His sharp eyes scanned the shadows for any sign of the predators that had followed them the day before. "Looks calm," Cade said, his voice low. "But don't let your guard down. They'll be watching for any movement." Naya nodded, feeling a rush of determination. "We have the advantage today. We know their patterns. We can plan, predict, and stay ahead." Cade smiled. "That's the human edge. Let's use it." They moved cautiously through the canyon, Naya leaning on Cade for support. Every step was calculated. She guided them around loose rocks and unstable ground, avoiding areas that could give the predators an opportunity to trap them. Her injury slowed them down, but it also forced them to think more carefully. Every step mattered. As they reached a plateau overlooking a valley filled with glowing crystals, Naya stopped. The sight was breathtaking. Hundreds of crystals shimmered in the soft light, reflecting green, blue, and purple hues. But she didn't have time to admire the view. Cade motioned for her to stay low. From the edge of the plateau, the predators emerged. Massive, armored, and intelligent. They had tracked the humans overnight. Their eyes glowed with a sharp, calculating light. And they moved with terrifying coordination. Naya felt a chill run down her spine, but she pushed it aside. Fear was useless. Strategy and courage would keep them alive. "Here's the plan," Naya whispered, pointing to the crystals below. "We'll use the reflections to confuse them. They rely on sight and coordination. If we break that, we can control the fight." Cade nodded. "I like it. But we need a distraction too." Naya's eyes scanned the plateau. She spotted a small pile of rocks near the edge. "If we push these over, the sound will startle them," she said. "It's harmless, but it will give us a few critical seconds." Cade grinned. "Perfect. Let's do it." They positioned themselves carefully, using every feature of the plateau as cover. Naya's ankle throbbed with every move, but she ignored it. She had survived worse, and she was not going to let pain or fear dictate her actions. Humans were clever, resourceful, and courageous. And today, those traits would matter more than strength or speed. Naya gave Cade a signal. He pushed the rocks over the edge. The loud crash echoed through the valley. The predators paused, startled by the sudden noise. Their coordinated movement faltered, and for a moment, they hesitated. "Now," Naya whispered. She grabbed a small, polished crystal from her pack and held it up to the sunlight. The light bounced off the crystal, flashing in multiple directions. The predators hesitated, their glowing eyes flicking from one reflection to another. Cade acted quickly. He used a rope to swing a larger crystal, creating moving reflections across the plateau. The predators hissed and clicked, confused by the shifting lights. Naya felt a thrill of triumph. Even here, in a world far from Earth, humans had the power to outsmart creatures far stronger than themselves. The predators regrouped, their intelligence apparent. They realized the humans were manipulating the environment and advanced more cautiously. Naya and Cade had only bought themselves a small advantage. They had to act fast. "Follow me," Naya said. She led them down a narrow, winding path between crystal formations. The path was tight, forcing the predators to approach one at a time. Cade followed closely, supporting her injured ankle. Together, they moved with precision, using the crystal's reflections to confuse and delay the predators. At a sharp bend in the path, Naya stopped. She set up a makeshift trap using vines and ropes from her pack. The goal wasn't to harm the predators permanently, but to slow them down and buy more time. Cade assisted, anchoring the ropes to sturdy rocks while Naya carefully looped them across the path. Hours passed in careful preparation. Every step, every placement of a rope, every reflection of light was deliberate. Naya's mind raced with possibilities. Humans survived, not because they were the strongest, but because they thought, adapted, and worked together. Cade was the perfect partner, supporting her physically and trusting her judgment. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the predators advanced. Naya and Cade held their ground, ready to spring their plan. The largest predator stepped into the narrow path, its segmented armor glinting in the fading light. It hissed, its eyes scanning the reflections. Naya took a deep breath. Now, Cade. He released a rope, triggering the first snare. The predator stumbled, momentarily caught. The smaller ones followed, and several became entangled in the vines. Naya held up her crystal, directing sunlight into their eyes. The predators faltered, confused by the dazzling lights. Cade acted quickly, using a small device to create a loud vibration. The sound startled the predators, further disrupting their coordination. Naya's heart raced. They were not just surviving, they were controlling the battle. Humans were clever, adaptable, and brave. Even against creatures designed to hunt and kill, they could prevail. The predators hissed and clicked in frustration. One of the smaller creatures broke free from the snare but hesitated, unsure how to advance. Naya realized they had the upper hand. Keep going, she whispered. We're stronger together than they are alone. Cade nodded. That's right. Human strength isn't just physical, it's strategy, courage, and ingenuity. Naya felt a surge of pride. Even injured, she had guided the plan, predicting the predators' movements and using the environment to their advantage. Cade's support had been crucial, but her mind had made the difference. Humans survived by thinking, observing, and adapting. Finally, the predators began to retreat. Their coordinated attack had failed, disrupted by reflections, snares, and the humans' clever tactics. Naya exhaled, relief flooding her body. She leaned on Cade, exhausted but triumphant. You did it, Cade said. We did it. Who? We did it. Naya smiled, her chest heavy with satisfaction. We worked together. That's what matters. Humans survive because we think, adapt, and help each other. That's our edge. Cade's eyes softened with admiration. You're right. And I've seen a lot in my time. But you remind me why humans are special. Courage, intelligence, and the ability to adapt. No other species has that combination. Naya felt a warm pride. The universe was vast and dangerous, but humans had tools no predator could match. Even in a world filled with intelligent, deadly creatures, they had survived and triumphed. As night fell, they set up camp on the plateau, hidden among the crystals. The predators watched from a distance but did not approach. Naya and Cade kept a small fire burning, careful not to draw attention. The stars of Koreth shone brightly above, reflecting off the crystals in a dazzling display. Naya lay back, her mind racing with possibilities. They would have to move carefully in the coming days, facing more challenges and more cunning predators. But she felt confident. Humans survived by thinking, observing, and never giving up. And with Cade by her side, they had a chance to overcome anything. Somewhere in the shadows, the predators waited. But Naya and Cade had shown them that humans were not easy prey. They were clever, brave, and relentless. The canyon was quiet now. But Naya knew this was just the beginning. They had proven their ingenuity and teamwork. But the universe had more tests in store. And she was ready. Humans survived because they adapted, fought together, and never gave up. She glanced at Cade, who was scanning the valley with sharp, alert eyes. Tomorrow, she said quietly, we push forward. We find the crystals, and we survive this planet. Together, Cade nodded. Together, he agreed. As the twin moons of Koreth rose in the sky, casting a pale light over the canyon, Naya felt a deep sense of pride and purpose. Humans were not just survivors, they were thinkers, innovators, and fighters. And in this alien world, that made all the difference. The predators would test them again, But Naya and Cade had learned something vital. Humans had an edge. And that edge was their courage, intelligence, and unity. And as long as they relied on that, they could survive anything. The journey was far from over. But Naya knew one thing for certain. Humans were not just living, they were thriving. And nothing, not even the deadliest predators, could change that. The dawn light filtered through the jagged cliffs of Korath, painting the crystal valley in soft shades of green and gold. Naya flexed her ankle, wincing. But it felt stronger than yesterday. She had rested carefully and allowed Cade to support most of her weight. Today, they would make their final push to safety and secure the medicinal crystals she had come for. Cade was already scanning the terrain, his sharp eyes moving over the valley and the canyon beyond. "The predators are out there," he said quietly. "We can't let them catch us off guard." Naya nodded. "We know their patterns now. We can outsmart them one last time." She adjusted her pack, making sure the crystals were secure. "Let's move carefully, step by step. Nothing reckless." They began their journey across the valley floor, navigating between clusters of glowing crystals. Naya led, pointing out safe footing and guiding Cade around patches of thorny alien plants. The reflections from the crystals helped confuse any predators that might be watching from a distance. Hours passed, and the valley gave way to a narrow canyon that promised a route to the extraction point, a small shuttle landing zone, several kilometers away. Naya and Cade moved quickly, but cautiously. Every step was deliberate, their senses alert. The predators had not forgotten them. But so far, they had not attacked. They were intelligent, patient, and observant. Suddenly, a loud screech echoed from the shadows. Naya froze, and Cade dropped to one knee, scanning the canyon walls. From the darkness, massive predators emerged, their segmented armor glinting in the morning light. They moved with terrifying coordination, circling the humans as if deciding when and how to strike. "They're trying to trap us," Naya whispered, her pulse quickening. Cade's eyes narrowed. "Then we make the trap work for us." He motioned to the narrowest part of the canyon ahead. "If we can funnel them through this pass, we can control the fight." Naya nodded. "We can use the crystal's reflections again, and the terrain, they'll be confused and slowed." Together, they led the predators toward the narrow pass. Naya used her knowledge of alien behavior to predict their movements, stepping aside at the last moment and letting Cade push a small boulder to create a temporary barrier. The predators stumbled, momentarily disoriented by the reflections from the crystals and the sudden obstacle. "Keep moving," Naya urged, leaning heavily on Cade. Her ankles screamed with pain, but she ignored it. Survival demanded focus, not weakness. As they reached the narrowest part of the canyon, Naya and Cade set up a final trap. Using ropes, vines, and carefully positioned rocks, they created a series of obstacles that would slow the predators and make them hesitant to advance. It was risky if they failed. They could be overrun, but it was their only chance. The predators approached cautiously, their glowing eyes flicking from one reflection to another. One of the smaller creatures tried to advance, but became tangled in a rope. Another slammed against a rock and paused, unsure how to proceed. Naya and Cade exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of their teamwork. Humans survived by thinking, planning, and trusting each other. Cade whispered, "This is it. We push through, and we're safe." Naya nodded. Together. Together, they moved through the pass as the predators hesitated. Naya's sharp eyes noticed a larger predator attempting to flank them, and she signaled Cade. He adjusted their path slightly, using a small rock to trigger a reflective flash. The predator froze, confused by the sudden burst of light. Step by step, they advanced. The predators were strong and intelligent, but humans had something no predator could match: strategy, adaptability, and the ability to work together. Every decision, every observation, every move had been calculated, and it was working. Finally, The edge of the canyon opened to a small clearing where a shuttle was waiting. The craft's engines hummed softly, ready for liftoff. Relief flooded Naya's body, but she did not relax yet. Cade stayed close, scanning the canyon for any last threats. "Almost there," Naya said, her voice steady. "Just a few more steps." A final predator emerged, larger and faster than the others. It lunged toward them, but Cade reacted instantly, using his rope to trip it. The creature stumbled, giving Naya the chance to sprint the last few meters to the shuttle. Cade followed, using the terrain to his advantage, and together they reached the craft. Inside, the shuttle doors closed, just as the predator reached the edge of the clearing. The engines roared to life, lifting them off the ground. Naya leaned against the wall, her heart pounding, but a triumphant smile crossed her face. They had survived. Cade glanced at her, admiration in his eyes. "You did it, Naya. Even with your ankle, you led us through that. I've seen humans survive, but today, you proved why humans are special." Naya smiled weakly, exhaustion and pride mingling. "We survived because we worked together. Humans survive by thinking, adapting, and helping each other. That's our edge," Cade nodded. "And never forget courage. Even when the odds are against us, courage makes the difference." Naya looked out the shuttle's window at the fading canyon below. The predators retreated into the shadows, their glowing eyes slowly disappearing. She thought of the Apache women of her ancestors, who had survived harsh lands and fierce enemies. She felt their strength in her. In every careful step, every calculated decision, and every act of courage, the shuttle rose higher, leaving the crystal valley behind. Naya took a deep breath, feeling the rush of air and freedom. They had accomplished what many humans would have thought impossible. Not just survival, but triumph over a world designed to test every skill, every instinct. Cade watched her, still scanning for threats, but there were none. He finally relaxed, allowing himself a small smile. "You know, Naya, humans have always been underestimated. But out here, in the wild, in the unknown, we shine. We adapt, we think, we survive. And we never give up." Naya nodded, feeling a sense of pride and clarity. The journey had tested them physically, mentally, and emotionally, but it had also revealed something vital. Humans were not just survivors. They were innovators, fighters, and problem solvers. Even against intelligent, deadly predators, they could prevail. The shuttle's engines hummed steadily, carrying them toward the extraction point. Naya looked at Cade. "Thank you," she said softly, "for helping me, for trusting me, for surviving with me." Cade shook his head. "No, thank you. Humans survive because of people like you. Brave, clever, adaptable. You remind me why we keep exploring, keep pushing, keep surviving. Humans have an edge no one else has." Naya smiled, her exhaustion fading into a deep satisfaction. The universe was vast and dangerous, but humans had something special: courage, intelligence, and the will to survive. As the shuttle approached the extraction point, Naya reflected on the journey. They had faced deadly predators, harsh terrain, and the challenges of a strange world. But they had survived because they had relied on each other, used their minds, and trusted in their abilities. Humans were capable of incredible things when they combined intelligence with courage and cooperation. The shuttle landed smoothly, and Naya and Cade stepped onto solid ground. Scientists and explorers rushed to meet them, astonished at their survival and the rare crystals they had retrieved. Naya smiled, thinking of the journey, the dangers, and the triumphs. Humanity had proven its worth, once again. Cade clapped her on the shoulder. "We made it. Humans survive, and we thrive." Naya nodded, looking out at the horizon. The adventure had ended, but the lesson remained clear. Humans were special, not because of strength alone, but because of their intelligence, courage, and resilience. As she held the crystals in her hands, Naya felt a deep sense of connection to her ancestors, to Cade, and to humanity itself. The universe was vast, full of unknown dangers, but humans had the tools to face them, and as long as they relied on their ingenuity, bravery, and teamwork, there was nothing they could not overcome. For Naya and Cade, the journey had been more than survival. It had been proof that humans could thrive where others might fail, and that even in the deadliest environments, the human spirit could shine brighter than any alien threat. The predators of Korath would watch again, and new dangers would rise in other worlds. But Naya knew this. Humans had an edge no one could take away, and as long as they remembered that, they would survive, adapt, and conquer whatever the universe placed before them. The shuttle lifted off, carrying Naya, Cade, and the precious crystals to safety. The twin suns of Korath faded behind them, leaving the planet bathed in quiet starlight, and somewhere, far in the distance, the predators watched, but humans had already proven their power, intelligence, and courage. Naya smiled. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and dangerous. But humans were ready. They had survived. They had adapted, and they would continue to thrive, wherever the stars might take them.